Return of the Mount Hua Sect, Chapter 243. To give us this so generously. Late at night, without anyone knowing, Chongmyung sneaked in the back of the sect leader's residence. The smile didn't leave his face despite being covered in dark clothes. Why didn't I think of this before? No, it wasn't that he didn't think about it, but rather because he had no reason to. Until now, there was no particular need for such things in Mount Hua, and even if it was necessary, they didn't have the ability to procure the cold iron. Even a small amount would need Mount Hua to sell off some of its mountains. Chongmyung looked at the small mountain behind the sect leader's residence with renewed emotions. If I wasn't here, the sect would have suffered so much. No, they would have suffered twice as much without me. They had been robbed of everything they had and had almost gotten expelled from their own land as well. When he thought of that, the tip of his nose began to get cold. Chongmyung brushed those thoughts away and started to get ready. Oh, come on. He had come all this way. Wasn't he once a beggar on the street who had no money to eat and was on the verge of dying? But hadn't he still dragged his body all the way here? I still have a long way to go. A long way. Anyway, once he figured out how to solve this problem, things would get better. Chongmyung narrowed his eyes and glanced at the mountain. Right, this isn't a time to be like this. With a stiff expression, he pulled out his sword and took a deep breath. Here I come! Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. A torrent of dirt erupted from the ground. Chongmyung was using his sword as an axe to slice apart the ground. Chongmyung, who entered the mountain in an instant, changed direction and moved forward. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. The sound of soil being pushed to the side resounded. I had such a difficult time back then. But not now. He could immediately feel how strong he had become in the past 2 years. Huh? Chongmyung, who felt something hard touched his sword, stopped. It's around here. Ha, right. Previously, he had opened it the right way and entered it. But this time, he had changed his method of entry. The more he kept touching it the right way, the more Hyunjung was likely to notice it. If that happened, he would be unable to enter. It has to be this, right? Chongmyung raised his sword and stabbed it again. Is this not it? Kang. Oh! The color in Chongmyung's eyes changed. I dug right. The hard thing that had stopped the tip of his sword. There was no way a rock could block his sword, which was loaded with ki. So what was in front of him right now had to be the secret fund storage that his sect leader had used in the past. No, this would end up being passed on to the next sect leader of Mount Hua. Let's see. Chongmyung shook his sword, and then piles of dirt rose up again, finally revealing a ceiling. Chongmyung admired it after looking at it for a long time. Amazing! Sect leader, how can you give this to us so generously? He had taken all the treasure from the warehouse and was now even cutting through the metal. The previous sect leader would probably get a stroke if he had been here to witness this. Yeah, you daytime robber. Let's talk later. I'm busy right now. Chongmyung, who decided to stop his hallucinations, raised his sword and stabbed the ground. Kang! This is quite solid. As expected of millennial cold iron. If he hadn't drastically increased his internal energy recently, he wouldn't have been able to even leave a dent on it. But not now. Chongmyung frowned and moved his sword. The ki in his danjan began to rise up in response to his movement. The ki, which ran through his body, rushed through his sword. Woong! The sword resonated in the hands of Chongmyung. With a slightly dazed expression, Chongmyung raised his sword. His sword drew a soft arc in the air. Shh! Chongmyung, who had wielded his sword tightly, reset the sword and pushed it back into the sheath. Kah! With his eyes wide open, Chongmyung had a happy face. Now, the cut. At that moment, a large piece of the cut iron fell down. Thud. Chongmyung's head was hit by the piece of metal that fell down. Pushing it away, he whimpered and cursed. No, is your head just for decoration? Of course the ceiling is going to fall down if you cut it like that, you idiot. He wiped away the nosebleed and looked at the piece of metal that had fallen down. Well, this must be enough, right? It was almost large enough for a person to lie down. With this size, he would be able to make a lot of pots. But the problem was, this is thinner than I thought. Right. A vault of this size should have been made of thick metal. Even the Shaolin sect would probably require a person to break down a couple of pillars to enter. But if Mount Hua did such a thing, it would go bankrupt. Chongmyung frowned as he looked at the cold iron. Then, the original plan was to make a pot by carving into a thick piece of metal. But the cold iron he had obtained was so thin that it seemed weird. This situation only meant one thing. Do I have to bend this? This millennial cold iron? Me? Chongmyung's eyes frowned. The only way he saw it was to beat this iron and cast it into a pot himself. The sad fact was that no one in Mount Hua or around it could probably do it. There is a place where it's possible. Wouldn't it be possible for the Jongnam sect leader and the elders? Right, they'd be happy to do it. They would smile with joy, going, ha ha ha, we'd be happy to help you as much as we can, you rascals. As if. In the end, Chongmyung sighed deeply as he realized that there was no other way but to do it himself. Right, I should do it with my life on the line. He then sat down and pulled a huge sheet of iron onto his lap. And as his left hand grabbed the lower part, his hand turned white as it gave out immense heat. At the same time, the plate of iron began to turn red. And he hit the heated part with his right hand. Kung! Isn't there anything, Kung, that you guys can do without me? Kung! His hands were hitting the iron, and he felt anger and joy as he thought about all that had happened the past year. At the same time, the extremely hard iron began to bend little by little. It was as minuscule as an ant's body. No, this bastard! His eyes blazed. Who was Chongmyung? Wasn't he the kind of person who could turn things around to his benefit even when he encountered a situation that didn't go his way? Come on, let's see who wins. Will it be you or me, huh? Let's see. Chongmyung raised his ki as much as he could and then clenched his fist and began to repeatedly hit the iron. Kung! 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 Eun-gak heaved a heavy sigh as he shook his head. He could barely sleep last night. The more I think about it, the more distant this feels. In order to make the pill, he had to get a special pot. The problem was that it would cost way too much money, making it impossible for Mount Hua to get. Will Chongmyung really be able to get some cold iron? There was, of course, the task of making the pot out of the iron. But first, he had to get the material. Even if Chongmyung was a ghost who had monstrous means, getting millennial iron was no joke, and that too in one night. For now, I need to say that it is fine. He had agreed with Chongmyung the previous day because they were all rambling, but failing was natural, so he had to console the child. Eun-gak let out a low sigh and opened the door as he stepped out of his room. Yeah, just thinking about all the stuff he had done so far. What? Shit! What is this? Eun-gak, who was walking out of his room calmly, was startled at the sight in front of him. His eyes were wide in shock. Chongmyung! There was a snoring sound, and he saw Chongmyung lying in front of him face down. No! Just what did he do overnight to make himself look like a beggar? His whole body was covered in dirt. How much did he sweat to have this much dust on him? What happened? Eun-gak's head turned to the side. This There was a large pot next to the child. It was huge. Every time light shone on the black pot, it looked blue. It was made of a metal he hadn't seen before. No way! Eungak's body trembled. No, it cannot be. Skring! Eungak drew his sword from his waist and pushed his key into it. Gulp. Gulping down, he immediately struck the pot. Ding! And he stared at his sword, which was now broken into two. It broke. The sword, which had been infused with my key, broke. Then... Cold iron. Millennial cold iron. He ran to the pot and hit it again several times. However, it only hurt his hand and the pot didn't even get dented. Come, sect leader! Sect leader! Ah! Eungak screamed and grabbed the pot and then began to run to the residence of the sect leader. In the yard of the medicine hall, only the snoring sound of Chongmyung resounded. Oh my! This is indeed cold iron! I have never seen such a huge amount in my life! Will this do? The elders all looked at it and tapped it with their hands. No, Chongmyung, where did you get this from? Get this, my ass! I made it by pounding on it with my hands. Oh my hands! This old man was up all night pounding it into a pot with his fist, and the young ones were sleeping in their bed. Chongmyung took a deep breath and said, Why does it matter? That's not what's important, isn't it? Right, that isn't important. Hyunjung shook his head. Eungak, no, medicine hall head. Yes, sect leader. Will this do? I would like to do a final test. Okay. Hyunjung approached and put his hand on the pot. He then started to infuse ki into the pot. Woom. The pot began to heat up. Oh, it holds. It really is cold iron. Regardless of how thin it is, it still holds up so well. Hyunjung and Hyunsang couldn't hide their joy. We did it! We did it, sect leader! Now we can make the pill. No, consider it already made. Ha 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 ha! Finally! Hyunjung's eyes turned moist. These people. Most of the work was done by Chongmyung, but after all these hardships, they were finally able to make the pills now. With this, Manhua will take another leap. Our ancestors took care of us. As if. Hyunjung tilted his head. Had he heard it wrong? Chongmyung, who was exhausted from the previous night's work, just waved his hand. Just get started. Quickly. Quickly. Yes, right. Medicine hall head. Yes, sect leader. I will prepare it right away. Chongmyung shook his head as he watched Eungak pour the ingredients into the pot. Ancestor? Those goddamn ancestors. Am I an ancestor? Oh, then he's right. What he said was right. Okay, now we add in the golden fruit liquid and body enhancing water, and by adding in the morning dew collected overnight. Eungak carefully added one ingredient after another and stepped back as he wiped the sweat off his brow. He then reached out to get the huge spatula. All the preparations were done, and after a couple of breaths, he said, Please start. Hyunsang. Yes, sect leader. They both held the pot from either side and began to imbue their ki into it. The two men who began to do that grabbed the pot with the most serious faces. Goo. There was an enormous fire ki being used at the center, and the ingredients began to boil. Nice, like this. Their faces filled with ecstasy, and Eungak continued to stir it. This is the right amount. Please keep it at this level. For how long? It will take around 10 days. Oh, then in 10... What? Both people looked at Eungak at the same time. How long? 10 days. Didn't you mention that it takes 10 days to make the pill? But you're now saying that this step alone takes 10 days. Yes, this step is all there is. You should have said it then, you bastard. Hyunjung and Hyunsang looked at Eungak with trembling eyes. If we were to stop and start again... No, we cannot stop now and start again. We have to do it for 10 days, for 10 full days. There was a glimmer of madness in the eyes of Eungak. This was the moment where he would achieve something important in his life. The moment Hyunjung was about to say something, a mumble came from behind him. 10 days. Hyunjung turned back and saw Chongmyung with the face of the devil. That was how his expression was. If these idiots blow up the materials, Mount Hua is bound to be discarded by the world once again. Chongmyung realized something at that moment. You can do it, sect leader. For sure, definitely. You have to, no matter what. People won't die just because they don't sleep for 10 days. Even if you die, hold on to the pot like you would hold on to life. And do your best as you die. I will never forget the commitment you had for your disciples. The sect leader truly lived only for Mount Hua. I am not dead yet, you idiot. Hyunjung's eyes turned wet. Oh my, I'd rather die from being hit by lightning